Hello, everyone, and welcome to our community dialogue on transportation challenges and solutions. My name is John, and I'm part of the Community Transportation Committee, a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing affordable and inclusive transportation to underserved members of Johnson County. With us today is a fantastic group of expert panelists: Kay Fisk of the Neighborhood Transportation Service, Harry Olmstead, an advocate for persons with disabilities, Mike Carberry, Johnson County Supervisor, Callie Rome, Executive Director of the North Liberty Food Pantry, Terry Bergen, the Lynn County Mobility Manager, and Brad Newman, the Assistant Transportation Planner from the MPOJC. The goal of this meeting is to not only display our research and findings, but also hear from everyone about some of the challenges you face when dealing with transportation to work, home, and anywhere else you need to go. To start off, we will be presenting a summary of our community survey, which was distributed to local shelters, pantries, and other service organizations in November of 2015 in order to find meaningful and significant figures about our area. Then we'll be branching into a sit-down workshop in which we're hoping to hear from all of you and work out some potential ideas about the issues that are brought up. We'll end with a panel discussion where you will be able to ask questions or bring up any concerns you may have. Let's get this started. So, our Barriers to Employment survey was distributed in November of 2015 and was composed of about 20 questions relating to where our respondents worked, lived, and any general complaints they had with transportation. This was all to get a solid understanding of who actually needed our help and the problems that they were facing. We looked for patterns, trends, and significant differences in order to find out which services and changes are the most necessary. We sent out our surveys to various shelters, pantries, and organizations around Johnson County and received 157 responses, which has given us a great starting point so far and has helped immensely with our data. The vast majority of our respondents are low-income workers, with about 60% making less than $10,000 a year, and almost 80% making less than $25,000 a year. The largest portion of our respondents are white, with a large group of Black or African American people as well. We also had responses from Latin Americans, Native Americans, Asians, and biracial people. This first chart shows some of the most important pieces of information from the survey. Out of the 140 people who responded to this question, nearly 35% say they lost a job due to poor transportation options. Over 40% say they had to turn down a job for the same reasons, and 30% said that they gave up looking for a job they wanted. Paired with the income levels of our respondents, it's a pretty frightening stat. These people need their jobs to help themselves become more independent, but the lack of reliable transportation is seriously affecting their ability to do so. Moving on, our next chart shows the times of day that were most difficult to use public transportation during. As you can see, it's overwhelmingly between the late night and early morning periods, about 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. This is to be expected, as most public transportation services do not run after certain times in the evening. From here on, our graphs are going to be split up by home location, which gives us more detailed information. Each graph may have different places shown, as some regions needed to be combined for accuracy purposes. The bars represent the percentage of each answer category based on the total number of responses, with each region adding up to 100%. I'll be able to answer any questions about this sort of format after the session is over. Now, this first detailed chart shows the difficult times to use public transportation again, just split up by home location. This mirrored our original results, with about 78% of the total responses falling between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. Our respondents from the south side of Iowa City struggled the most in the early morning period, between midnight and 7 a.m., and our respondents from the eastern side of Iowa City had a significantly high portion of people struggle during the late night period from 9 p.m. to midnight. These figures were helpful to know when looking at this next chart, which displays the job shift start times reported by our employed respondents. Over 40% of the respondents started work sometime between 6 p.m. and 5 a.m., which falls between that threshold of time that was most difficult to actually use public transportation. This hit our respondents living outside of Iowa City the hardest, as only 30% of people that lived in Coralville and North Liberty started work between 5 a.m. and 1 p.m. It's no wonder that our respondents are having issues keeping or finding jobs when their shift times are during the periods of day where public transportation is the most difficult to actually use. This next chart shows the differences in various modes of transportation used by our respondents. On average, buses are the most important, except in North Liberty. However, the North Liberty Transit Service has since been put into operation after we collected this survey, and we believe their bus usage has increased. This has been an important reference point when dissecting and then connecting various issues between different regions around Johnson County, such as this last chart, which shows the percentage of total responses after splitting up various transportation issues. The bus schedule was the most common problem on average, with bus stop locations and frequency of buses close behind. Scheduling was more problematic for people from downtown and the western side of Iowa City, where many people instead choose to walk or use cars. Bus stop locations were troublesome for people in the northern side of Iowa City, where they actually are the most heavily reliant on buses. Coralville experienced problems with the frequency of buses, more so than anywhere else, along with troubles of getting driver's licenses and affording cars, along with the south side of Iowa City and North Liberty, where cars are more frequently used. Now, this has been our most helpful visual for determining issues that people are having, and we plan on adding to it once we distribute and collect our surveys again, which we are planning to do so soon. Obviously, fixing these problems takes an enormous amount of planning and effort, which is part of the reason why we're here tonight, in the hopes of getting more opinions from the community. At this moment, these are just our findings. We aren't yet asking for extreme change. Instead, we just wanted to show you what we have gathered so far. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation, and I'll be able to take any questions that you may have now. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Did you lump your transit with just buses? Did you measure?
Yeah, anything that wasn't, I'll go back real quick. Anything that, wasn't walking or any other form of transportation was thrown into buses as well. If nothing else, we are going to start to split up and get the room together for our workshop, or sit-down workshop. So at this time, we ask everybody to kind of. I'll go for it. All right, he's got it too. Okay.
Thanks for coming, everyone. My name is Jeremy Ensley. I'm the founder of CTC, and we have also with us today our two board members, Anamika, if you want to say hello, and Mary Abood. So we're going to be breaking up into workshops based on a couple of different needs that we identified. And these weren't just identified in the original survey. Since we did the survey, we've talked to a couple of different groups about different other transportation issues, so those are going to be included. So we're going to break up into 5 groups, and you're also welcome to bring up, any problems that you might have in your group that doesn't necessarily go along with the subject. And we're going to have a volunteer from each group take notes so that we can record your responses. So there's going to be 3 rounds of discussion, and it'll be about 10 minutes each. And so you should also pick one person to present your issues at the end of each round. Okay. If you're in your groups now, we're going to have a question for each round. So the first round, we're going to have the question is, regarding transportation, what are your concerns and what are the challenges that you found?
Okay, so I am the representative of the bus service group in the back. And as far as some of the concerns, challenges that were brought up with us, shuttle stops was one of the first suggestions brought up. They run during the school year right now, and obviously afterwards they are shut down. And it was suggested to make them a year-round function rather than limiting them to just the school year. There was a suggestion to include Camp Cardinal as part of one of the public transportation routes, as there are people there that need to be included in routes without having to walk an absurd amount to actually get to one. More transparency and consistent communication with bus stops and bus frequency was one, especially the timing of when buses were actually coming is confusing, and not actually knowing where they're going to stop is something that is a big concern. Otherwise, more options for weekends and late night transportation was the last real concern that we really had. As part of the ideal future, we were looking at potentially taxing, including bus service fees as part of city taxes or just local taxes in general. Expanding the North Liberty train line to include Coralville and parts of Iowa City. Having an app or some sort of reliable guide showing the actual, set in stone bus frequencies and bus stop routes. Otherwise, also one that I wasn't aware of until it was just brought up, having an official city set bus station rather than just using places like the mall in order to kind of keep it local or keep it centralized and have a little bit more organization in that regard. And how we getting there takes a lot more planning than what we could come up with during the time, but it would take involvement from the university, all the jurisdictions of North Liberty, Iowa City, and Coralville. Obviously, it would help the university around with students and getting them around places that aren't on campus. As part of the things that we're willing to give up, obviously, there's certain things like pricing of bus tickets and pricing in general for these matters that would have to be changed if we would like to get some of the things that we wanted. And but at the same time, if there's a more reliable and efficient public transportation, bus, train service around, then people would be more likely to give up using cars every day. So that is another trade-off that would be beneficial.
I thought of another thing for you guys.
What's that?
Electric buses.
Would be a lot more efficient, yeah.
I said, how accurate is that Bongo app? There's a Bongo app that does.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate it is. So.
That was something that's brought up. It was, yeah.
I know about how it works.
The general regard was that it's a little inaccurate, so something that's a little bit more set in stone and actually transparent would be nicer.
Show the routes. So like you can click on like a bus stop, but you can't see what time Broadway goes to that bus stop or that bus stop. Also another thing is like in terms of like an institutionally for Iowa City, the ways that Lakeside and Broadway, for example, on the southeast side of Iowa City only run in every hour. So like going to the east side or the south side takes a lot longer. But if you try to catch a bus from downtown to the west side, you can catch like 5 or 6 buses within the hour, and then sometimes you can be on the bus to the west side and be the only person on there. Whereas Lakeside and Broadway are always packed, which shows the necessity for a bus to be given every half hour, and that's something that other transportation groups have brought up. Or like the fact that Lakeside or Broadway doesn't go to Kirkwood, where a lot of the population in those areas go to Kirkwood Community College. So they'd have to take a bus downtown and then take a bus from there back to Kirkwood. So it takes them an hour and a half to go to school. And that's a huge barrier for education, et cetera.
So balancing out the routes and frequency would definitely help.
And
Okay.
not just on who has more money.
Yeah, oh yeah. So yeah.
I would also say the Bongo app, if you're not happy with it, give them feedback, because they're still like working on the app. I mean, it can be modified to make it work better. So, definitely feed that back if you're using it, it's not doing what you need it to do.
All right, I think that's all we had for our group. Anyone else want to go next?
So our group, we were dealing with rural transportation, transportation outside of Iowa City and Coralville, basically, and concerns and challenges. Well, first we talked about the bus service to North Liberty. There's one bus in the morning that goes to North Liberty or comes from North Liberty and drops people off at the Coralville Intermodal down in our river landing, and then it returns in the evening. And then there are 4 buses, a fixed route within the city of North Liberty a day that makes a big loop around North Liberty at some of the housing developments, and it goes to the grocery store, it goes to the community center, which has the library and the pool and all the other facilities, and it goes to also the pantry. But the ridership is so low, the ridership averages 1 ride a day, not one rider a loop, 1 rider a day. And so that's not going to be cost feasible in the long run. Some of the other concerns and challenges, we have a lot of people that have to get into the core of the Iowa City Coralville area for work. A lot of them live, say, in Tiffin or in Oxford. They live in Hills or Lone Tree. They live in Swisher, Shoeyville, Solon. There are 11 incorporated communities within Johnson County, and only 3 of them have bus service. And North Liberty's bus service is limited. We already talked about that, so we have a real concern there. Now, one of the reasons that there's people that live out there is that it's more affordable to live in Oxford than it is in Iowa City. But the fact is that the #1 employer in 7 different counties is the University of Iowa and the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. That means that there's a lot of people coming in from Washington County, from Iowa County, from Cedar County, Louisa, Muscatine, 7 different, including Johnson County. That's a lot of people that we have exported our affordable housing to. So these are challenges, and so when the only bus service available to any of those folks is in those small communities is seats, and which is our paratransit system, and that's only available usually in those small communities 1 day a week. And then, of course, we already saw the issues with second and third shift transportation and Sunday transportation. Those also, so seats does not run there either. So there's no paratransit. What is our ideal future? Is some sort of a consolidated bus system, whether that be a Johnson County rapid transit district or a regional rapid transit district that would serve the corridor. And so you might have a bus that, say, runs in from Oxford and then stops in Tiffin and then gets into the core of the community, and another bus that also serves Hills and Lone Tree, and maybe a bus that serves Swisher, Shoeyville, and Solon. Those folks could use some transit as well. One of the things we found is that the people that, or we theorize, is that the people in those communities, they already know that there's no public transit, so they have to have a car, and so they're used to having a car, and that might be one of the reasons why the ridership in the Coralville bus is so low, that you can't survive in North Liberty without a car. So they have a car, and it's more convenient for them to use the car instead of waiting. That bus only comes around from 2 until 4, or 10 o'clock in the morning until 2, and it only runs once an hour. So if you need to run to the grocery store, you can get in your car, go to the grocery store, and be back before the bus even got there. So those are the concerns, and but a consolidated bus system would be great. The problem is this has been studied in this area maybe for 30 or 40 years. Brad would probably know how many different reports there are sitting on his shelf of consolidating a bus system regionally, and it's never gotten anywhere. It's a nice survey, and we do some good research, but it's just we're not sure. One of the reasons that it could work is that you get economies of scale, and you also would eliminate some white-collar jobs. And so you don't need, if you only had one transit system, you'd only need one executive director. Right now, we have an executive, You have a transit manager for Iowa City, you have Coralville Transit, you have Seats, which is our paratransit, and then you have CAMBUS. So you have 4 different chiefs, if you will. If you had a consolidated system, you could eliminate 3 of those jobs and then use that money to buy more buses and more drivers, hire more drivers and more mechanics. So you could extend those services not only to those small communities, but you could then also maybe extend those services in the second and third shift, the nighttime we were talking about with the issues, and also then with on Sunday service. So that's a dream. But what do we need to make this work? We need cooperation. And, somebody's gonna have to drive the bus on this, so to speak. And who is that? I don't know. But one of the ways we could start is working together is to have a bus pass that works throughout all the systems. Right now, I don't believe you can get on a bus in Iowa City and get a transfer to the Coralville system or vice versa. If you bought one monthly bus pass, you should be able to use that throughout the system. And maybe if we could get cooperation just starting there on a bus pass that worked all over on any of those systems, maybe that would be a good start for us to move forward to maybe start thinking about this as well. Now, the big dream for me is not just a countywide transportation system, but one that was actually regional, because we're growing as what we call the corridor, the Lynn County, Johnson County corridor, and there's a lot of people that are getting in their cars one at a time and getting up on 380 back and forth, and it's a parking lot that moves at 75 miles an hour. How do we get those people off of there? Maybe buses is the answer, maybe Krandic route, the old interurban, get using rail to do it. And so maybe the big dream is not just to have a consolidated Johnson County transit system, but one that works all over, up and down the corridor, and a person could get on a bus in Oxford, Iowa, and take the bus into Iowa City, and then get on the train and take it to the airport and never get into a car. That's the dream. Can we do something to make it a reality? I don't know, but maybe a bus pass that works within other cities is a good place to start. So that's what we got.
If you can read my notes. Hello? Hello? Okay. I'm Mary.
And I'm Ann.
And Ann is a local citizen who is here because she wants to learn more and express some views and so on. Anyway, so we had, our topic was transit, I'm sorry, not transit, for people with disabilities. And I guess the first thing we looked at was, what's the reality right now? And from, we have an astute member of our group named Harry, who has a lot of personal experience, more than I have. And so speaking just about for persons with disabilities, right now, the way people get around are pretty much through 22 buses, 22 Seats buses. Many of them need to be replaced. Many of them have over 300,000 miles on them, and but they're very expensive, costing around between $90,000 and $100,000. The only other thing is taking the fixed route buses, but they don't take you door to door like Seats does. So that's the reality. But if somebody needs to go, if somebody who is using a wheelchair needs to go to the airport, they can't do that. And a lot of other things as well. I guess that's sort of the situation. You should pipe in anytime you want. We talked about what the ideal future would be.
Yeah. So I think I would go back to the issue about like getting to the airport and think about how an issue like that influences someone's quality of life and what options are available to them for recreation. They can't go on vacation as easily as someone else would, as one example.
Unless you have your own special van, right?
Or an airplane, but who has that, right?
The airplane, yeah. But something very simple, an ideal future would be to have working buses that can move people with disabilities and get them door to door where they need to go. A lot of the current buses have heating and cooling issues, which is not good for anybody, but also certainly not good for someone with disabilities and might be on various medications and so on. The ideal future, though, is to have regular rural service, obviously, more than once a week, Sunday service, extended hours of fixed route buses, more rural community, more rural service, longer Saturday service. Again, for people with disabilities who primarily rely on that kind of transportation to get around.
And we talked about too, thinking about for people with disabilities, if we design the system with the most vulnerable people in mind, then that system is going to, or those protections are going to benefit every other person as well. So we need to remember that some people with disabilities have no other option, really, than to use either seats or the fixed route buses. So we need more frequent service, including during the midday sometimes. And then need to educate drivers on how
Oh, yes.
to, like if you're on a Coralville bus, on how you can catch a transfer for an Iowa City bus, because it seems like they don't know how to do that. I know it's possible, but the drivers aren't sure.
Or how to
Go
speak
back.
to each other? Yes.
Yeah. And then
I think it
we
was on the
talked
other
about
page.
a little more bus
Bus
shelters
shelters.
sometimes. It seems to be located only in neighborhoods where they really, really push for it, or I don't know if there's other criteria. And that, public transportation.
Oh, yeah, if we're really trying to increase public transportation in this community and surrounding communities, because it's better for the environment and everything else, and we want to encourage people to not drive as much, then obviously the public transportation can use some improvements and extensions of the hours, the availability, and again, like you said earlier, if we make it so that it meets the needs of people with disabilities, everybody else will benefit as well. I think, speaking just in general about issues, to get more and more people to use the public transportation, the mobility manager that we have, who unfortunately could not be with us tonight, although she really wanted to be, has expressed interest in helping people learn how to ride the bus or any kind of public transportation, because people are a little unsure, and sometimes if you aren't sure how to get around, or are you going to be stranded someplace? When is the bus coming? How long is it going to be? Even something, if you're not really into using your phone for all this kind of stuff, having an actual sign with pictures of the route, like they do in metro systems in big cities, where you can actually see, oh, it's coming up, it's coming up. Educating bus drivers or any public transportation with working with people with disabilities or kids, what was another one? People with...
Like autism is one example. I just witnessed one incident with a driver. They might already train drivers on this, but I just witnessed one incident. It might be isolated, I don't know. And mental health issues as well. And then we thought it would be a good idea for organizations and companies to encourage employees to use the bus, like the University of Iowa does. They subsidize bus passes, actually. It's a great deal for employees, but that would help drive up ridership.
Paid advertising in the buses. There isn't any, I guess, right now. I used to work at the university for many years, and we used to have all kinds of events going on. We'd always have posters, and we'd stick them in all the buses for free. But I swear I remember seeing advertising, but if it's true that there isn't any advertising locally. There should be, because that can help bring down the cost, maybe expand the routes, expand the service and so on. And, oh, no Wi-Fi. There isn't Wi-Fi apparently on the fixed route systems, maybe. And there used to be, but there isn't now. And that would be very helpful for everyone, or for many people anyway, who are riding for a while and have work they want to do. Okay, so that's about all we came up with, but I agree with regional service, because it would help everybody. Go Community Transportation Committee.
Need a cheerleader.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Kay Fesk, and I work for Neighborhood Transportation Service in Cedar Rapids, which is a program of Horizons. And we had the children's issues that we were trying to address, and we broke it down into several different categories. One of the children's needs that we have is daycare. Daycare is an extremely expensive thing. It's hard to get your kids where they need to go if you have to change buses and things like that. We also talked about homeless kids and the things that they go through to try to get where they're going. After-school programs and special events for children that are in various activities. We talked about summer meal programs for children that are in disadvantaged areas, getting the meals to the children, having transportation to get there. And we also talked about mobile library that would serve children that might otherwise not have an opportunity to get books. So these are kind of the ones that we identified, and some of the solutions that we come up with or the future we'd like to see. And I have to admit that I stole many of these ideas from the ideas we've used in Cedar Rapids to alleviate the problems that we have there. The first one, not necessarily, but the daycare situation, a demand response system might be effective in that area. You'd have to have something where you could do scheduling, where you knew you'd have to let the transit provider know in advance how many children were going to be picked up and when. It could be done on a daily basis, monthly basis, weekly basis, whatever would work best. With the homeless kids, we ran into the situation in Cedar Rapids where the Cedar Rapids School District had been taking the homeless kids to and from school with taxi cabs. And not only there was a stigma attached for the kids that were riding because getting off of a taxi was kind of a questionable thing, but also it was costing them a great deal of money to transport the kids with a taxi. So they contracted with us to take the children to school, and it's worked out beautifully. So contracting to get kids, homeless children, to and from their destinations. The after-school programs and events and extracurricular activities. Carpooling is as old as the hills, and it's effective, and if your kid and somebody else's kid's going to the same place, why not pool together? And this was not my idea because I'm not techie. We even talked about an app to do that. There's an app for everything. So I thought that was really good, though. I like that. I don't want to have anything to do with it, but I think it's a good idea. The summer meal program. There's summer meal programs probably here in Iowa City, too, I would dare say. We run a very large one in Cedar Rapids from Horizons, and even before we became a part of Horizons, we still were helping with the meal delivery. And that's just a matter of, having a service that takes the meals out from where the meals are prepared and taking it to the site where the kids are located and making sure that they're getting a nutritious meal. These are usually children that are on the free and reduced lunch programs, and they're not getting a meal during the summer if they don't have one provided. So we've been able to provide that. It's worked out quite well. Another one I brought up was getting international students to various locations that they like to go to, like the mall and Walmart, Target, places like that, from the colleges. Most of them, the international students, have come from countries where mass transit is readily available at all times of the day and night. And when they come to America, unless you're in a very large city, well, you don't have that option. So we've been able to take the kids, pick them up, take them to their destination, let them roam around a little bit, and take them back. It's been very popular, and they've enjoyed it, and so have we. So what do we want to see for the future? We talked a little bit about how the demand response might work for the daycare and the carpooling and so forth. There's always the matter of money with anything that has to do with transportation. That's a given. And it's becoming less and less all the time, so we're digging harder and harder to try to make ends meet. But there's a lot of innovative ideas that you can utilize. Sponsorships are always good. People who live within your community want to see things work. They'd love to have their name attached to something that works really well, and that's kind of a feel-good type thing. So sponsorships are always good, and like I was saying, let's just say you need $10,000 for whatever activity it is, or let's just say $10,000. Well, instead of thinking of it that way, we'll go out and see 5 different companies and ask for $2,000, and then it isn't near as big, and you're much more apt to get it. They're much more apt to give it to you because it's not that big a donation. And if you stick their logo somewhere where it can be brightly seen, well, they like that too. So that's just some of the ideas that we come up with. And I think the very bottom line with almost anything that that has to do with getting people where they want to go in the capacity that we do is collaboration. You've got to work with everybody in the community that you can get to partner with you. Other nonprofits, your city government, your county government, your MPOs, anybody that has any kind of a title in front of their name, you want to be a friend with them, you want to be able to work with them, you want them to understand your issues. You want to try to understand theirs too, because you may be able to help them, and in turn they'll be able to help you. So this is kind of what we come up with. And you have anything to add?
Great.
You were well, I'm sure glad you come up here with me. All right, thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I was with the driver's license and challenges group, and for the concerns or challenges, we said a lack of affordable driving lessons. That's a huge, like most driving schools charge $500 or upwards, and most people can't afford that. And we came from a refugee or immigrant perspective for most of the issues, so keep that in mind. So we talked about needing assistance to get a permit, as well as getting ready for a driving test, like help in getting training for taking the exams, having translation services needed for not only the exams, but for the booklets, etc. And yeah, and then even with those kinds of classes, talking about what's like sufficient with the law. A lot of people drive with a permit thinking that that's like a driver's license, or that they're licensed to drive like officially, not necessarily understanding that you have to take a couple more steps. Yeah, I said the translator, permit classes, and driving license classes. Okay, and then, so we said an ideal future would be, again, to have classes. So have classes for teaching how to take, classes for the permit exam, as well as the written driving exam, as well as actually having driving lessons. And so that could include working with various driving schools and sponsoring people, or having people volunteer for, to teach people how to drive, as well as having people volunteer to teach classes. Yeah, making translation a necessity instead of a privilege. Also, a knowing your rights law instruction. So, like with driver's license, knowing your rights in terms of like getting pulled over, etc. Knowing how to respond, insurance in the car, it's like all those things. And then some barriers to that is like insurance and licensing. So if an organization were to head that, there's liability involved. Yeah, so community involvement and awareness. And then, an assessment process would be needed to see where everybody is. Because some people know how to drive already, like might have driven in their country of origin or just know how to drive, and might really need help with the written exams. And others might have never like driven a car before and need a lot of help with the driving lessons, but the written exam might not be as big of an issue. So if anyone has any other suggestions or comments, yes?
I don't know if people are aware, but the public library, I received public library.
Yeah, has the booklets?
Sorry?
Go on.
On the second floor, in the rear of this room, that the state has put in a machine that you can renew your driver's license right there.
Wow. We didn't know
And
that.
state IDs too.
Oh, cool. For a fee or for free?
You have to pay.
Pay a fee, okay, yeah.
But it's just the same fee that you would pay if you went to a physical office. And, you know, it's no more, you don't pay anything any different than you would if your license renewal costs $10, it costs $10 at the kiosk.
Okay. And is that just to make it more accessible, like for people to come? Okay, cool. So, yeah.
What was the actual title of your group?
Ours was driver's licenses and challenges driving. What are the concerns? Yeah.
Did anybody talk about when you get your license taken away from you, what are the different, options? Best of all possible. I mean, what you're talking, the issues you brought up are definitely big issues.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was brought up.
No, that wasn't. That's a good point.
A lot of families I work with where that is the big issue.
Yeah, and what the challenges and solutions are. Yeah.
Program where you get a temporary license and so on.
Also with translation, there's a lot of different groups in town that do English second language classes outside of what they do at Kirkland.
Yeah.
So maybe one of those groups would be able to translate to those languages.
Exactly, yeah.
They
And
might
like,
just have to do that
in
a
workshops.
lot better than
Someone
I've
else.
been in communication with state DOT, and they are looking at developing some new apps and some new ways of doing the driver's training. And I've been telling them that we need more languages available. So I think it's something that they are,
Working on?
that they
Cool.
they need to hear from us, like what is needed.
Yeah.
And so the louder we can be, kind of more, descriptive we can be to that.
Cool. So would they be able to take the exams in their native language?
Yeah, so ideally we
Okay.
can have the books and the exams in additional languages.
Wow, that'd be really great. Okay. Yeah. So, cool. Oh, sorry.
So I really like the idea of using volunteers to as much as we can.
Yeah.
Because, I think we're lucky to live in a really progressive, committed community that at a time when people are really looking to help refugees and give back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we can capitalize on those opportunities as much as we can, it's great. And then also, I think we need to think about kind of like, not so much when they get their license taken away, but situations where they might have a broken tail light or something like that, where they know they're not supposed to drive, but they don't have any other option to get to work.
Yep.
Things like that, and then they end up driving, and then they get stopped at police.
Then get a huge fine. Yeah.
And then eventually they might go to jail.
Yep.
Because of unpaid parking tickets or unpaid fines or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so somehow we need to educate people about this issue. We need to maybe work with police on something.
Mm-hmm.
Some initiative. I don't know what else we could do, but I think we need to consider that
Yeah, I definitely agree.
I work with development, we have like gap programs or something, this is off the head, like just kind of out there, but like as part of the driving program, maybe have a class where they teach people how to do like change your tail lights, do simple repairs like that, where you could drive still. Because changing tail lights, I don't know how many people know something about cars, that's super easy to do. So I feel like tires and stuff, so maybe teaching people as part of the curriculum, how to do some of the simple repairs, so if it's something simple, they can fix it themselves. I mean, that's it.
Some of the local automobile supply places, you go in, they'll come, put that taillight down.
What? Cool. Okay. Well, let us know about the volunteers because we have a women's support group on Saturday, and a lot of women have indicated their desire to learn how to drive. Like, that would be great. So if we could start driving lessons, wow. Just let me know. I'll be over here. Okay.
Can I just say one thing too, Jeremy, about talking about the police? I was at a meeting earlier this week where the new chief of Iowa City was there, and he was talking about some extensive training that they're going to be starting about so the police officers understand that just because you pull someone over for the taillight, do you need to do that? Is it, the impact that it has in a larger way on especially vulnerable populations or, that kind of thing. So they are aware of it and they are working to address that and to make sure that everybody understands what the situation is. So I just thought it might be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a really good meeting. He did a great job, and it was at the Constellation Religious Communities, and he had some really hard questions, and he really did a good job. So I was really impressed.
Thank you for all your excellent comments. So if we could have the panelists come up. They're going to kind of give their reaction to what they've heard tonight, and then we'll have the opportunity to ask them some questions. Okay, thank you for coming tonight. Thanks for coming tonight. So maybe if we want to start down with Harry, you can kind of give your reaction, and then anyone would like to ask questions
My reaction
to what you've heard tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think we know that we have need for improvement in our community, and the ones that can really make it effective and do something about it are politicians. And so as we have elections, we need to ask those hard questions about what they're going to do with this trade. But we also have staff, and we got to convince them that we have real needs here that need to be met. We don't have a lot of dollars in transit any longer, and so it's difficult to replace buses at 90 to 100,000. But we still need to be aware that these are concerns in our community.
Okay. Thanks, Harry.
My name is Terry Berg, and I'm the mobility coordinator in Lynn County. As was mentioned, Johnson County now has a mobility coordinator. Her name is Kelly Snyder. She's been on board for 2, maybe 3 months. And I'm sure she'll be doing some great things. She unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but we do basically the same types of things. I've been at this for a little bit longer. I heard a few things that I wanted to comment about. On the one hand, there are certainly challenges with the overnight between the data that was presented and what people have said. But keep in mind, the buses stop in Cedar Rapids at 6 o'clock, not 11 o'clock. But they go pretty late here. So there are some advantages already in this market that are pretty good. But ideally, yes, you would love to have a service like what NTS provides in Cedar Rapids. They provide rides to work and school at the times when the buses don't run. And NTS started out with just a single van and a couple people getting it going, and then they added, and then as the demand grew, and it's the sort of thing you call in, you make your reservation, you have to pay for your ride, but maybe you pay one way, and then by the time you're off work or on other way around, you might be able to take the city bus home or some other bus, Corvo bus or whatever. So something like that, I think, is something that really should be looked at. It involves probably some initial financial support to get a vehicle or vehicles, and then possibly some subsidy from one of the bus systems. But I think it's something
that really would have a nice positive impact. It's very challenging for people who can get a job and can make more money, but it's going to start at 11 p.m. and get done at 6 a.m. And if they can't get the buses to work for them, then they can't get that job. So that was one thing. A lot of these things, I really believe in regionalism, as was mentioned. For example, I think about things like, well, why do we have a mobility coordinator in Lynn County and one in Johnson County? Why couldn't we have one that serves the whole area? Certain parts of the state have that. But we've got so many different transit agencies and so many different constituencies, it's kind of hard to do that. And it's the same thing with coordinating services. I work with transit agencies in Lynn County, and they have their focus area. And so when I say, well, let's try to do something that will maybe cross the boundaries of counties and go out to pick people up in this area. Well, people in Cedar Rapids are paying for the service for Cedar Rapids. They're not paying for it to go out to Vinton. So whether it's politicians or taxpayers, that's always the challenge, is getting people to open up their mind and think about things in a different way. So to look at things from a regional perspective takes usually some sort of shock to the system. Big change doesn't happen unless people say, oh my God, we're out of money. We can't do this anymore. What can we do? And then the example I would look at is schools. When you're going to lose your school in your little community, all of a sudden partnering with another community makes sense. But before that, you would say, no way, we need our school. Our school's great. Well, yeah, but if you can't afford it, that's when those decisions really start to happen, is when the money gets to be an issue. So I work with a lot of human service agencies, and I think that's a big thing, is to keep regular communication between the mobility coordinator, the transit agencies, and the human service agencies, because that's where a lot of the information and good ideas come from about people's needs. So I encourage those types of things. And looking for new sources of funding. Whether it's the Area Agency on Aging or somebody else that might have funding that you didn't even realize, and you might be able to try something new with that funding. So I could go on about this stuff all night. This is my wheelhouse. So, but thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Terry.
I'm Brad Newman. I'm with the Metropolitan Planning Organization of Johnson County, and I work directly with transit agencies. There are a lot of comments regarding the transit system tonight. Unfortunately, I don't work with the day-to-day operation, but I know enough when I hear the discussion, but I guess I would encourage those questions and comments to be presented to the transit agencies in writing and have them respond. I think a lot of those issues that were brought up can be clarified fairly easy. I think they are doing some things, it's just you may not be aware. But that's an education thing, and that needs to happen. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here tonight, but I really would encourage that to get to, because I think a lot of that can be answered. We did hear a lot of talk about regionalism. We have 4 transit systems within this urbanized area. That discussion comes up every few years. But it tends not to go anywhere, and I think a lot of that is because what they really need is a third party to come in and look at it, because they're looking at their own system. And basically, there's a fear, I don't know if it's a fear, or it's more of a concern. Everybody operates different, and there's an identity there. Like with Coralville, that's the blue bus. Everybody knows that's a Coralville bus. If that changes, Coralville is a little leery of that. I think the biggest thing is cost. I think we need to know how much money could be saved, if at all. We might be able to eliminate some administrative positions, but because of the way the system, the facilities, and the biggest thing is the University of Iowa. Their operators, their drivers are students. There's no union there. There's no higher pay wages. And for them to simply do away with the student labor, go with union labor, their costs would go up considerably. So I don't know if they're real keen on doing that. And there's such a different system, considering they stick to campus, it's a free system, it's paid for in a different way. And that's the other thing, Iowa City, Coralville, the way they pay for their systems, most of their federal money is probably less than a quarter of what the system actually costs. So the rest of it is made up by a very small portion of state funds, which isn't a lot. The rest of it is user fee, basically, your fares and tax money. Iowa City has a transit levy. It's at 95 cents per $1,000 valuation, and that's as high as they can go. And they're already there. Coralville's is a little bit less, so they have a little bit of wiggle room there. And of course, CANBUS is student fees, parking fees that pay for their system, so it's very different. I think some of the issue of combining service for the communities is how much control they would lose. I think Coralville kind of sees it as, well, are we going to be forced to pay more in our levy? We're going to lose that control because when you start talking regional authorities, they have taxing power. So they set that transit levy, not the community. So are their residents going to pay more, or are they going to get less service? Because they're not making that call anymore. It's an authority doing that. So there is some fear there. Not that it couldn't happen, and not that it shouldn't happen. I think, at least, the way I see it, and I work with them all the time, and we do their planning documents, and a lot of your concerns are in our documents already. A lot of it comes down to money. They struggle to do what they want to do, let alone do the extra. So we struggle a little bit there. I think a lot of your concerns are valid. I think some of the different routes, I think we heard a comment about some routing changes, and I think that's necessary. I think, again, it's a third-party issue that should come in and take a better look at the overall system. So we're trying. It's definitely not a perfect system by any means. But they do communicate. We did have the highest ridership in the state in this urban area. We have about 7 million rides a year, which is more than Des Moines. And Ames is right there with us because they're a similar system. Of course, a lot of that is campus because they're short rides and a lot of people at one time. So, and I did hear some concerns about one person on the bus, or the off-peak versus peak hour. And we struggle with those all the time. We do hear those comments that I saw the bus go by and there was one person on it as well. But we have to run that bus. It's a set schedule. It's a set route. We can't just, well, there's nobody on it, we're just not going to go today. We can't do that. There are a lot of limitations, a lot of rules, a lot of regulations with the federal government and the state government. So the equipment, yes, it is old. I think Iowa has the 48th oldest fleet in the country, statewide. I think to get all the buses up to date and current would cost over $250 million just for Iowa. Unfortunately, we're limited to $4 or $5, $6 million a year statewide for new buses. So it's very slow. We're operating some buses, I think, from the late 80s yet. The problem with that is the maintenance costs go way up. But a new bus costs about $500,000. And they only last about 12 years, is what the useful life on buses, on big buses run around, is about 12 years. Your seats buses, it's about 5 years. And those are about $100,000 anymore. So we compete with everybody else in the state for new buses, replacement buses. There's no money for expansion buses. You just don't have it. So we wait and see what the federal government's going to do with transit, to see if any of that increases or decreases, and we'll go from there. So there are some struggles, but I think they're good comments, though.
What about routes? I heard a comment about extending the Lakeside and Broadway to Kirkwood College.
Yes.
Is that something that?
That was the comment. I think that's a good suggestion. I think the way Iowa City operates, it's a hub and spokes system, which means the buses go out, they come back to one point. I think what they would like to do eventually is some of those routes, maybe on the west side, some on the east side, circular routes that don't have to go downtown to do that. But I think your suggestion is a good one. And I think that's part of what they need to do is review those routes. We're a growing community. I think Tiffin, North Liberty, Coralville, I think that's the big growth area in the future. I mean, they're really going to expand out that way. The issue there, again, is what type of housing is going to go there. Because everybody said, well, they're growing, let's buses. If it's single-family housing, the density isn't there to warrant a route. And that's one of the biggest issues we have is the density issue.
Sorry, in regards to your previous comment about like a bus only having one person and you guys getting those comments a lot. So, but then if we talk about density, if there's a pattern of like some buses only having one or two people on them for the most part and other buses being really full,
I imagine you're seeing the empty buses on off-peak times. They're not the peak time. And I think that's the difference. But you have to run them on the off-peak as well, in case somebody needs to use them. And you can't just
yeah,
go somewhere
I was
else.
saying other buses, like Lakeside or Broadway, for instance, during the off-peak times, still have a good number of people, which shows a relative need for having a bus every half hour instead of hour for those high-density areas, right?
And those are the kind of comments that need to go to training.
Okay.
And that, again, with your questions and comments, I think that all needs to go.
Yeah.
It is a good suggestion. I think that's something warrants something, for them to look at.
Okay.
The question was if the ridership is there, then why can't the frequency increase? So.
It's all money. It's just a question of, okay, we can have more bus frequency, but then we're either going to have to lose it over here or we're going to spend more money. And that's a challenge because in a lot of communities, what you'll hear is, well, this percentage of people use the bus. I'm paying for it. You're going to keep raising more, cost me more. I never even use it. So it's they're in a kind of a tough spot. They'd love to do it 24 hours a day, and they'd love to provide routes to all parts of the city. It just gets to be that, we don't have more money. How can we make it work? And that's what they'll tell you is they're trying to balance it. I'll put it over here. That means somebody over here is going to lose.
Yeah. There just seems to be an overall lack of balance.
Yeah.
In not only my humble opinion, but throughout many other people in Iowa City. So,
Cities change all the time, and I think city bus systems need to look at their route structures regularly. Cedar Rapids is getting ready to make a big change for the first time in a long time. They don't want to upset the apple cart. They got a lot of people that are used to a system working a certain way, and to make significant changes is a pretty big deal. So they don't just do it lightly, but the more they hear and the more people give them feedback,
pretty much just
the greater the likelihood.
anyone with comments
I think one of the things you also have to look
and
at,
give it to them
we
because
have
they
to
can't
talk
hear
about
anything
is
else. I think so.
subsidy that
I
has
turned it
to
on,
be
so.
made. On the Seats bus, it's cost $18 to run it, but a round trip for a Seats passenger is $4. So that means, take forward from its 18, we're talking about $14 has to come from somewhere for each trip. But we have to have the bus because it's a federal law.
I think your frequency question, and like Terry said, it's either you put another bus or you take out most of the stops on that route to speed it up. And it's, Iowa City has over 600 stops in their bus system, and I think that's way too many. And so I think like Cedar Rapids is doing, I think Iowa City, Coralville is probably due to take a look at it, and those are the suggestions they do. So again, I would encourage you to put all that in writing.
There was one thing I needed to correct. You mentioned that the Iowa City bus system goes to 11, it goes till 10. The last bus always leaves downtown around 9 o'clock, makes a route, but they're all back. There's no riding after 10 o'clock.
Except Saturdays.
Yeah, it does goes to 11, some of those routes.
Some routes maybe.
Coralville goes to about midnight.
Yeah.
We're being asked by the tech staff to, if you could speak more into the mic, and maybe we can move on to the next panelist.
Sorry, one more thing. Just anybody with comments out here, if you just want to raise your hand, I'm going to throw you this microphone too so they can hear it back there.
Thanks, John. Thanks. Okay, so my name is Kayla Rome. I'm the director of the North Liberty Community Pantry. I'm not an expert on transportation, but I do serve vulnerable populations where transportation is a big issue. And all of these comments are really helpful, and I've learned a lot. I hope you guys have learned a lot. It's great that the community is getting together and talking about these things. I think one of the things that we need to think about is that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. As much as buses have been a main topic of conversation for a lot of the populations that I see are in those rural areas that have different transportation issues, such as cars breaking down and gas money. A mass transit system is not just going to pop up overnight and be regionalized in one, quick, easy step. So I think, it's really helpful that, again, submit these comments to the appropriate places so that, the systems that are in place can get corrected. But I think it's important to not just create pilot programs of mass transit that is going to fail and think really long term. So Mike had mentioned that, Coralville's created their bus system when they only had a population of 2,500 people, and they probably lost a ton of money to begin with, but now, they looked ahead of what the population was going to be, and I think that's, where North Liberty is right now, is they started this transit system, has one rider a day, it's not great, but they're looking at, long-term, where's their population going to be, are they going to, leave room for dense housing where people are going to be using a bus system, and, it's sad to see one rider a day, but education is a big piece of that, encouraging people to, forego what is their lifeline, that is their car, that they've used to get to and from places forever, and take a more inconvenient route, just so that, we can demonstrate that they would ultimately save money in the end. And the more education that we can do about the bus system, the better. And that's a long process, and I think, again, having these conversations is really helpful in the long run, but it's not just a one solution is going to fit all. We talked about a lot in our small group about the university being able to provide their bus system for free, and how much property they're taking up throughout the entire county, and possibly providing that transportation to those places throughout the entire county, and how can the general population also take advantage of those free bus systems. And again, they they follow different rules, and they have different funding, and they have drivers that are basically always available from the student body. So continuing to work with partners such as the university to get people into other areas like North Liberty and Oxford, and I know they go out to Washington, or they have property in Washington County and Riverside and whatnot. So yeah, I'm not an expert on it, but I know that it's we're not just going to create this regional system overnight, but possibly a countywide system. I think a bus pass that can go between every transit system that does exist is a great idea to start, or ride sharing, and continue to communicate those things to not just folks in Iowa City who are used to using transit, but individuals in more rural areas who are not used to riding a bus.
Just to clarify about the bus passes, the 31-day pass, both the Coralville, Iowa City, will go between systems, but the 10 rides and the single ride coupons that a lot of my clients get at Shelter House and that are passed out by nonprofits, those don't necessarily transfer between systems, so you can go one way, but then you can't get back. So I think we need to look at not just the 31-day pass, because that's already established, but we need to look at an all systems pass for someone that's utilizing a 10-ride pass or a single ride pass. Right.
Well, I mentioned earlier, my name is Kate Fisk, and I guess one thing that struck me about what I've heard here tonight is the commonality of the problems that we have both in Lynn County and Johnson County. They're quite a bit the same. But it is refreshing to know that we're trying to do something about it and that we have groups like this that are providing input. One of the things we've talked about so much is funding. It's the big thing that we all face, and Doug was talking about the aging bus fleet and that. I was in Washington, D.C. in February to lobby for transportation and bus replacement. And right now, we are $5.3 billion behind in our funding from 2012, when a government program went away. That was called MAP 21. Doesn't mean a thing to people in the transportation business. But since that time, there has been a new funding stream that's opened up, and it will be there until it's good now through 2020. It'll give us a little bit more money to work with, but we are looked on with great, I don't know, revere, I guess you'd say, from the people in the FTA in Washington, D.C. as Iowans, because they say we're so tenacious and stand right up and fight for everything that we want, and how well we work together. I think that's a compliment to all of us, because this is a testament right here how well we work together. But I think that is the key to getting groups together like this, so that we can talk about our common problems and try to find ways to address them. The funding issues, of course, are harder to overcome, but some of these things are pretty, I don't know, easier to address, I think, because many of them are just paradigm shifts. You get to the point where you think it's always been this way. We can't change because it wouldn't work if we did something different. And I think that's something we have to be able to overcome. Creating more positions with younger people who have new ideas is really important. Fresh ideas that might be better ones than we've been using in the past. But I've enjoyed tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to serve on the panel and to be a part of this. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, my name is Mike Carberry, and I'm a Johnson County Supervisor. I've been involved with the Community Transportation Committee before I was elected, so maybe I've been on the board for 2.5 years. I think I've been involved with this group for about 3 years, and I want to thank Jeremy and the CTC for holding this forum this evening. I think I'm going to try to pull a few things together here. I think transportation is just one of our big issues here in Johnson County. There's a lot of issues because we are the most expensive place to live in the state, and there's a lot of other forces that are making transportation an issue. One of them is affordable housing, which is probably our biggest problem. We have a hunger issue, we have healthcare issues, and most of these are issues of poverty. And but it is a money issue. And what I would say to people, it's also elected official issue. You got to elect the right people that care about these issues, that care about income inequality, and care about the haves and the have-nots. And when people that are running for office talk about things, you want to talk about the budget. And so if Johnson County say, well, you say you care about this, but show me your budget, and then you prove that you care about that. And I just got back last night from DC as well. And I grew up, before I was elected official, I was a professional environmental advocate. You need to push the issues that you care about, in this case, transportation. We need to talk to our elected officials at every level. There are 52 seats up in Johnson County this fall. That's school board and city council races. Electing the right people at every office is really important. I was the third progressive person elected to the Johnson County Board of Supervisors, and then we were able to raise the minimum wage. That raise has been pulled away from us, but fortunately a lot of folks are still getting that 10-10 because a lot of the employers decided to keep the 10-10 minimum wage. If we want a consolidated transit system that's either Johnson County or maybe it's regional corridor-based system, then we need to ask our elected officials to do that. I think we have a progressive city council in the city of Iowa City. I know we have a progressive board at Johnson County Board of Supervisors. Keep asking us to do these things, and maybe we'll eventually get to where we need to go. But if you don't ask, you'll never get. So keep asking, and when people are running for offices, and there'll be some city council races in Coralville and North Liberty, and we'll have Board of Supervisor elections next year, ask them about these issues. It's important, because if you don't ask, you won't get. And so I really think that where we need to go in the long run is to have that consolidated system. It's been studied before. I think Brad addressed it very well. It's just, there's a fear, and it's a money issue. If we can continue to take a look at it and really get down into the brass tacks as to where we can find some savings with a consolidated system, and we can show those elected officials that this is the way to go. The city council of Iowa City kind of directs the city manager on what directions they're going to go, and the city, the transit director works for them. So if you get the right people into office that are interested in this thing, we can maybe push the ball forward. So I think that this is an idea that's been talked about before, but I think it needs to be talked about again and keep it on being talked about, or we're never going to get that vision that we see of expanded days and expanded night service and expanded service into the rural communities and expanded service up and down the corridor to get that transportation system that we need, and not just buses, but carpools and van pools and bike lanes, that are can be used for commuting, and we need to get out of single people out of cars, and single cars are expensive, and they're really expensive for people that can't afford them. We don't make enough money, and if a poor person has a breakdown in their car, and it's a $500 expense, most of those folks don't have $500. They could lose their job with it when their car breaks down. Well, if that happens, there should be an alternative. They should be able to take the bus to and from work. And that's kind of what CTC is all about, is workforce transportation for underserved communities. We need to focus on that and make sure that the people that need to get to and from work can do it possibly without a car. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, and CTC is a newly minted nonprofit. We would like to support not just advocacy on bus service, but other initiatives in the community. Like tonight was brought up, driver's training and training material in other languages. We need to be innovative and come up with more ideas and not just depend on bus service. Are there any questions for the panelists?
So much a question is a comment. Like, how about those bikes you can rent? Like Des Moines has them? Oh,
Can you talk to that, please? Thanks.
okay. So I was thinking, when I lived in Des Moines, they have those bikes you can rent. They're a public bike. There's bike racks throughout the Des Moines downtown area. You can take these bikes, drop it off back in that bike rack, and you rent it. I don't know how much you put in for it, but it's a usable bike within the community. So it's something kind of for this area, but maybe not the rural areas. But it's just kind of an idea.
Yeah.
Bike share.
Yeah, the University of Iowa is just starting that up now. They did receive some funding for that bike share program, and I think it's in conjunction with the city of Iowa City. Mm-hmm. So it's coming, which is not here.
I think in that same regards, the other day I was waiting for a bus on the west side, and I saw this woman pull her car in, and then she went to get the bus. In a lot of cities, we have park and ride systems, so that the person can leave the car if they were not congesting the downtown area or wherever with a lot of cars.
We do have two intermodal facilities, Iowa City and Coralville. Each have an intermodal that can be that are serviced by buses, and that is designed for a park and ride situation. Now you have to pay a park, but you can do that and get on the bus.
She parked big park lots and moves in your car.
So you also have the issue of the last mile on a bus. So the bus goes all the way to your house, but all the buses now have bike racks on the front of them, and so you can ride your bicycle, and hopefully one day it might be a shared bike, but get on a bus and take it and then drop that shared bike off at a rack on the other side of town that's close to your work. And so one of the issues that we have with buses is, we can't get the routes to go everywhere you need, but the people need to get from where they live to the bus stop, and sometimes that can be problematic, but being able to take your bicycle onto the bus is one of the answers to that.
We do have the bike library that's available for people to check bikes out, and you can also get help repairing your bike. So if you haven't heard of that, check out the Iowa City Bike Library. Are there any more comments or questions?
This is dangerous. Okay. Somebody brought up an app for ride sharing or, carpooling. I have so many times I've worked with a client and they're working someplace where a lot of other people are going, maybe live near each other, I don't know, but trying to get people to, maybe rely on each other and help each other out by carpooling. But an app, like an Uber app or a Lyft app or something, somebody ought to develop that.
IoT has rideshare program where you can go online. We actually have one for the corridor. So if you get into the Iowa rideshare program, you can then be directed to the corridor.
It's called Corridor Rides.
Corridor Rides.
Oh,
and
yes.
you can put in all that
Forgot about
information
that.
and try and line up carpooling.
And there's also van pooling now available. And is it this fall they start the express bus, or is that next year? 18. There'll be an express bus from Cedar Rapids to the Iowa City area, and it's kind of in conjunction. They need it because they're going to be starting some work on 380, adding the Forever Green Road exit, and then after that there'll be the I-80, 380 interchange. They need to get some of those cars off of the road, so they really want to carpool, van pool, and get them on an express bus.
It sort of gets back to when do these things happen? The change very rarely seems to happen just naturally. People are so used to their cars. But for example, in Cedar Rapids, when we had the flood, we had people offering to drive people wherever they needed to go. Came out of the woodwork, we have to sort of be fostering a mindset that talks about we're there for each other. This is the type of community we have, and this is what we can do when we work together. But it takes groups like CTC and others, pushing that message and that cooperative spirit to really get people. There'll be people that are going to the store. They'll drive by 10 other people that wish they could, but they don't know. But we just need to keep working on those types of things as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming tonight. We need to wrap up. Thank you to all of our panelists and all of you who put in your comments. If you'd like to get more involved in CTC, we have a sign-up sheet, especially if you'd like to join our board. We're looking for new board members. Thank you for coming.